They control you with your hunger to be liked, not with chains, not with armies, with your weakness, the pathetic craving to be accepted. The second you bend, the second you soften just to win a smile, you've already surrendered. You've placed the leash around your own neck. Look around. Most men live as slaves and call it virtue. Terrified of rejection, addicted to validation, they trade away their strength for applause. They betray themselves daily, thinking it makes them safe when it only makes them small. That is not strength, that is self-destruction. Machiavelli exposed the truth weak men refuse to hear. You cannot be controlled once you stop needing to please. Kill the hunger, and you become untouchable, cold, deliberate, immune to the games of approval. A man who does not need to be liked cannot be broken. He cannot be guilted. He cannot be shamed. He cannot be exiled because his power does not come from your applause. That is why the feared outlast the loved. That is why rulers command while pleasers kneel. Burn this into your mind. Respect is never given to the one who asks. Respect is seized by the one who refuses to kneel. That is the law of power. Ruthless, unforgiving, absolute. Comment this phrase right now. No leash can hold me. Prove you understand. Prove you're not just another man begging for chains. Approval is a leash, nothing more. The man who craves it is already owned. He bends his words, softens his will, and kneels for smiles that mean nothing. That is not strategy. That is weakness. And weakness in this world is fatal. Machiavelli was clear. Men are ruled by their desires and their fears. If your desire is to be liked, you will always be ruled. They can guilt you. They can shame you. They can silence you. You reveal your weakness, and the strong will use it against you. That is how control works, not through chains, but through your own hunger to be accepted. The pleaser is never respected. He is tolerated when useful, discarded when not. He confuses tolerance with honor and scraps with loyalty. But behind closed doors, he is laughed at. No one fears him. No one follows him. He is replaceable, and a replaceable man has no power. Power begins the moment you kill that craving, when you no longer flinch at disapproval, when you can endure rejection without breaking. You step outside their control. Your silence becomes a weapon. Your indifference becomes armor. The man who does not need their applause becomes immune to their manipulation. Understand this. Fear commands loyalty. Love does not. A man who cannot be bent by opinion forces others to adjust to him. That is why rulers command and pleasers obey. That is why the feared endure and the liked fade. Approval is temporary. Power is permanent. Cut the leash. Stop trading away your authority for smiles. Stop confusing weakness with kindness. A man who is untouchable does not beg to be liked. He forces the world to respect him or choke on their resentment. Both outcomes serve him. This is the first law. Approval is slavery. Indifference is freedom. If you understand, prove it. Comment this phrase, I do not chase, I command. People are always watching you, not because they care, but because they are measuring. They study your tone, your eyes, your silence. They test you, and the instant they detect that you need something from them, they own you. That is how control works. You hand them the key yourself. Weak men never see this. They think being agreeable makes them safe. They think pleasing makes them strong. But what they really show is predictability. And predictability is submission. If I know you crave approval, I can control you with a smile. I can punish you with silence. I can bend you with rejection. I don't need force. Your own hunger enslaves you. Machiavelli wrote that men judge more by what they see than by what they know. That is why image rules reality. The pleaser imagines he's being authentic, but his posture screams weakness. He is begging for scraps, and once you beg, you are already beneath those you beg from. Perception becomes your prison. Approval is not free. It is a currency. They give it, they take it, they ration it, and if you need it, you will dance to whatever tune they play. That is why the pleaser is always a pawn. But the man who kills that need becomes unplayable. His silence unsettles. His indifference terrifies. You cannot bribe him with praise or break him with shame. He becomes a problem no one can solve. Look at history's survivors. They were not the ones adored by the crowd. They were the ones who endured hatred and stood unmoved. They were called cruel, arrogant, ruthless, yet they lasted. Because lasting does not come from pleasing. It comes from strength and from fear. The weak man stares into the mirror and wonders, do they like me? That question is the chain around his neck. The strong man never asks. He does not measure himself by applause. He measures himself by his power, his ability to resist, to endure, to remain unbroken when others collapse. Burn this into your mind. In every room you enter, you are either the observer or the observed. If you reveal your weakness, you are already conquered. If you reveal nothing, you remain untouchable. And the untouchable man is always the one in control. Comment this line if you understand. I reveal nothing, I control everything. Show that you are not another pawn begging to be seen. Power does not wait for permission. Only the weak ask to be allowed. Only the slave checks if he's approved. Every time you seek permission, you admit dependence. You announce that someone else's word is higher than your own. That is not humility. That is self-erasure. Machiavelli taught that it is safer to be feared than loved. Why? Because fear does not ask. Fear imposes. Love is fragile. It shifts. It dies. It betrays. But fear endures because it leaves no choice. The pleaser builds his life on love and wonders why it collapses. The strong build on fear and endure through storms. Watch the pleaser carefully. He is always waiting for signals, a nod, a smile, a word of approval. He cannot move without them. And when those signals stop, he freezes. That is not a man. That is a puppet waiting for strings to pull him. The strong man cuts the strings. He acts without permission. He decides, then he moves. The world adjusts to him, not the other way around. Understand this. Nobody respects a beggar. They tolerate him. They exploit him, but they never follow him. Leadership is built on command, not requests. A ruler does not ask, do you agree? He declares, this is the path. And even those who hate him are forced to move in his shadow. Permission is a cage. Every time you ask, you shrink. Every time you wait, you waste. The untouchable man does not ask, he takes. He does not wait, he executes. If he wins, he expands. If he loses, he learns. But in both cases, he remains free, because his movements are his own. Think of this carefully. The crowd despises the man who kneels, but it cannot resist the man who commands. Even enemies are forced to acknowledge strength. They may hate you, they may curse you, but they cannot ignore you. And in power, being hated is safer than being invisible. Burn this into your mind. Stop asking. Stop waiting. Stop bowing. The moment you move without their approval is the moment you begin to rule yourself. And a man who rules himself cannot be ruled by others. Comment this phrase if you understand. I move without permission. Say it. Write it. Prove that you're ready to cut the cage open. Dependence is the enemy of power. The man who depends cannot command. He may appear strong, he may wear the mask of confidence, but beneath the surface he is chained. His survival rests on others, on their approval, their resources, their validation. And a man who depends is a man who can be controlled. Machiavelli understood this with brutal clarity. Whoever feeds you, owns you. Whoever you need, rules you. It does not matter if it is a king, a woman, a crowd, or a master. You are no longer free once your survival depends on their hand. The pleaser is the most dependent of all. He cannot function without applause. He cannot breathe without validation. His very identity is held hostage by the opinions of others. That is why he is always powerless. Dependence makes you predictable. If I know what you need, I know how to move you. If I can threaten your supply, I can bend your will. That is how rulers control populations, armies, and individuals alike. They create dependence, then ration it. The same tactic works in every arena of life. If you depend on being liked, then I can control you by withholding it. If you depend on recognition, I can control you with silence. The chains are invisible, but they hold tighter than steel. Freedom does not come from asking for less. It comes from needing less. The fewer dependencies you have, the harder you are to control. The man who can stand alone, unmoved by the absence of approval, becomes untouchable. He may be hated, he may be feared, but he is never owned. Look at history. Every tyrant maintained power by feeding dependents. Bread for the crowd, rewards for the loyal, praise for the obedient. The wise ruler takes the food, but never begs for it. He uses the system, but he is never enslaved by it. That is why he endures while others collapse under the weight of their addictions. You must become that man. Kill your dependencies. Starve your hunger for approval. Break your need for applause. Then no one can bend you because nothing can be taken from you. A man who does not depend cannot be ruled. He may lose everything, but he remains sovereign. That is power, cold, absolute. If you understand this law, comment, I need nothing, I cannot be owned. Prove that your mind is not for sale. Indifference is not weakness. It is a weapon. The man who cannot be swayed by praise or broken by insults is a man who cannot be controlled. He hears both applause and ridicule as noise, nothing more. That silence, that refusal to react, is what terrifies people. Because when they cannot read you, they cannot rule you. Most men crumble under judgment. They obsess over opinions, terrified of being disliked. They dress for approval, speak for validation, move for applause. Every decision is a negotiation with the crowd. But what they don't understand is this. Every time you react, you expose yourself. You give away the map to your weaknesses, and once your weaknesses are exposed, they are used against you. Machiavelli taught that appearances matter more than reality, but the appearance of indifference is reality's sharpest mask. When you show no desperation for approval, people assume you hold power. When you respond with calm silence instead of defense, they assume strength. The truth is irrelevant. Perception is everything. And indifference creates the perception of control. This is why indifference is feared. It makes you unpredictable. They don't know if you will attack, if you will forgive, or if you will simply walk away. And unpredictability is power. People can plan against the emotional, but they cannot plan against the unreadable. Indifference keeps them guessing, and men fear what they cannot predict. Look at the pleaser again. Every time he hears criticism, he scrambles to explain. Every time he hears praise, he glows like a child. He exposes himself in both directions. He is easy to read, easy to play, easy to break. That is why he will always remain beneath the cold, silent man who reveals nothing. Indifference is not about avoiding conflict. It is about controlling it. When you do not react, you force others to reveal themselves first. They show their anger, their weakness, their desperation. Meanwhile, you remain calm, composed, untouchable. That is why rulers speak little and observe much. It is not detachment, it is power. Burn this into your mind. Every reaction is a chain. Every silence is a blade. If you want to be untouchable, master indifference. It is not emptiness, it is control. Comment this if you understand. My silence is my strength. Prove you are not another man bleeding weakness for the world to see. Power is not built on kindness. It is not built on approval. It is built on fear. This is the law most men refuse to accept because it offends their illusions. They want to believe love is enough. They want to believe kindness secures loyalty. But Machiavelli destroyed that fantasy centuries ago. It is safer to be feared than loved because love is fragile and fear is enduring. Look closely at human behavior. Affection shifts with moods. Praise today becomes betrayal tomorrow. Those who love you will abandon you when their feelings change. But fear binds differently. Fear ties them not to their emotions, but to consequences. A man can stop loving you at any moment, but if he fears you, he cannot act against you without paying a price. That is why rulers who rely on love collapse, while rulers who master fear endure. Most men chase love because it feeds their ego. They want the applause, the praise, the comfort of belonging. But what they don't see is that this makes them weak. The crowd only loves them because they please the crowd. And the moment they fail to please, that love evaporates. The pleaser always ends up despised because no one respects the man who kneels. Fear operates differently. It creates distance. It establishes boundaries. It signals, "I do not need your affection. I demand your respect." Fear forces people to think twice before crossing you. Fear makes betrayal expensive. And in power, survival depends on making betrayal costly. A man who is loved may be admired, but a man who is feared is obeyed. You must understand the economy of fear. Every interaction is a transaction. If you are desperate to be liked, you are giving away power for free. You are paying others with your dignity, your silence, your submission, all in exchange for empty smiles. That is a bankrupt trade. A man who builds on fear does the opposite. He charges others for every step they take toward him. His respect is earned, his approval rare, his tolerance conditional. The result? People move carefully around him. They measure their words. They treat his presence as weight. That is how fear creates value, while love makes you cheap. Machiavelli wrote that fear is under your control, while love is not. You cannot command people to love you, but you can command them to respect you by showing strength, by refusing to bend, by ensuring consequences for disrespect. That is the core of power psychology. If something is outside your control, it is worthless to chase. Approval is outside your control. Fear is not. Fear is built, maintained, and wielded. Do not mistake fear for cruelty. Fear is not about constant punishment. It is about posture. It is about being unreadable, unbending, unwilling to tolerate insult. A ruler does not need to strike often. He only needs to strike once, decisively, to set the tone. After that, fear maintains itself. This is why silence, boundaries, and indifference matter. They all feed the perception that you are not to be trifled with. Fear is not noise. It is presence. The pleaser cannot understand this. He is addicted to being liked, so he lowers his guard, softens his words, forgives without thought. He confuses love with safety, but his constant eagerness to be liked only makes him cheaper, easier to discard, easier to betray. And betrayal will always come for him, because no one fears betraying a man who bows. Look at the strong instead. They are not always adored. They are not always liked, but they are always respected. Even their enemies hesitate before crossing them. Even those who hate them cannot ignore them. Fear commands attention where love fades. In every empire, every throne, every battlefield, fear is the true currency of survival. Burn this into your mind. If you must choose, choose fear. If you must trade, trade approval for respect. Let them curse you. Let them resent you. Let them call you cruel. None of it matters. What matters is that they cannot control you. What matters is that they cannot break you. The loved man dies betrayed. The feared man dies obeyed. Comment this line if you understand. Better feared than broken. Prove you know the law that pleasers will never accept. In this world, truth is irrelevant. Power is built on perception. The mistake of weak men is believing that honesty is strength. They think showing their feelings, exposing their vulnerabilities, being real earns respect. It doesn't. It earns chains. Because the moment you expose yourself, you hand others the tools to control you. The man who shows everything is the man who can be broken in every way. Machiavelli understood this perfectly. Men judge more by what they see than what they feel. Few look deeper than appearances. That is why rulers wear masks. That is why generals wear armor. That is why powerful men reveal nothing but what serves their purpose. Reality can be attacked. Illusion cannot. The mask protects you, not because it is false, but because it keeps others blind. Look at the pleaser. He wears no mask. Every insecurity bleeds out of him. He tries to look agreeable so everyone sees his fear. He tries to sound humble so everyone hears his weakness. He thinks he's winning love, but all he's doing is handing the world the blueprint to break him. He believes vulnerability is courage. In reality, it is suicide. A man who shows his wounds invites the knife. Now look at the cold man, the one who speaks little, reacts less, and only reveals what he chooses. He wears his mask like armor. You cannot tell what he's thinking. You cannot see what he feels. His calm posture unsettles you. Is he amused? Is he angry? Is he plotting? You don't know. That ignorance creates caution. That caution breeds respect. And respect, once established, sustains power. The mask is not deception. It is strategy. You don't lie. You control what you reveal. You don't expose weakness. You project strength. Even if chaos burns inside, the world sees only the cold, unshaken face you wear. That face becomes your weapon. That face becomes your fortress. Weak men resist this because they want to be authentic, but authenticity is a trap. The world doesn't reward truth, it rewards control. A mask is not dishonesty, a mask is survival. Even the strongest rulers, the most feared emperors, wore masks. They smiled when necessary, they frowned when useful, they revealed nothing they didn't intend, and because of that, they remained untouchable. Think of it like war. No general reveals his full strategy. No ruler exposes his true weakness. No predator shows his soft underbelly. Why should you? To be honest. Honesty is weakness when it serves no purpose. Your truth is your weapon. Use it with precision, not recklessly. When you master the mask, you control the narrative. People will see only what you want them to see. They will project their fears, their doubts, their respect onto you. You become larger than life, not because of what you are, but because of what you allow them to believe. That is how myths are created. That is how leaders become legends. Not through authenticity, but through control. Burn this into your mind. The world doesn't respect your truth. It respects your strength. And strength is not shown in exposure. It is shown in restraint. Hide your doubts. Hide your fears. Show only what advances your power. That is the mask. And behind the mask, you are untouchable. Comment this if you understand. My mask is my fortress. Prove that you will no longer bleed weakness for the crowd. Prove that you are ready to control the image, and through the image, control the world. Power is not built in the crowd. Power is forged in isolation. Weak men fear being alone because silence forces them to face themselves. They need the noise, the validation, the constant reminder that they matter. Without it, they collapse. But the strong man learns to embrace solitude, because solitude is where he sharpens himself into something the crowd cannot touch. Machiavelli wrote that a ruler must never rely on the goodwill of others. Why? Because goodwill shifts like the wind. Crowds love you today and curse you tomorrow. Dependence on the masses is suicide. The wise ruler withdraws, observes, calculates. He builds his fortress within, so even if the world turns on him, he does not break. That is the discipline of isolation. Look at the pleaser. He cannot survive a moment without approval. He scrolls for likes. He begs for compliments. He fears silence because silence feels like death. His entire existence depends on being noticed. This is why he is powerless. A man who cannot stand alone is already owned by the crowd. His worth is borrowed, never earned, and what is borrowed can be taken away at any moment. Contrast him with the stoic man of power. He uses isolation as training. When the noise disappears, he is unmoved. When the applause fades, he remains. He does not shrink when forgotten, because his identity is not built on their recognition. He studies in silence. He builds in silence. He hardens himself against the fear of abandonment, and when he returns to the world, he carries a presence no one can ignore. That is the paradox. The man who does not need the crowd always dominates the crowd. Isolation is not escape. It is refinement. It is the place where you cut off your dependencies and build discipline. Alone, you learn endurance. Alone, you test your limits. Alone, you strip yourself of the pathetic hunger for approval. Every moment spent mastering solitude is a moment where chains are broken. The more you can endure silence, the less power anyone holds over you. Because what can they threaten you with? Rejection? Exile? You have already embraced both. Understand this. Men who need constant company are weak. They leak information. They expose insecurities. They beg for comfort. Solitude terrifies them because solitude reveals the truth. They are hollow without others. But the strong man becomes dangerous precisely because he is complete in silence. He cannot be bribed with attention. He cannot be broken with exile. He cannot be controlled by loneliness. His isolation is his fortress. History's most feared leaders understood this law. They could withdraw, they could disappear, and still retain power. Their strength did not vanish when the crowd abandoned them. Why? Because their core was untouchable. Crowds can elevate or destroy a pleaser, but no crowd, no betrayal, no rejection can touch the man who has already mastered himself in solitude. Burn this into your mind. If you cannot stand alone, you cannot stand at all. Approval, applause, companionship, these are luxuries, not necessities. If you need them, you are weak. If you enjoy them without dependence, you are strong. Master isolation, and no exile, no rejection, no silence can be used against you. That is how you become untouchable. Comment this if you understand. I stand alone, therefore I cannot fall. Prove that you are not another slave terrified of silence. Prove you are building your fortress in solitude. Weak men believe that saying yes earns them allies. They think agreeing, accommodating, and yielding will buy them loyalty. But every yes they hand out makes them smaller. Every compromise carves away at their authority. And soon, there is nothing left but a hollow shell. A man who has been consumed by everyone else's demands. A man without boundaries is not respected. He is devoured. Machiavelli taught that mercy without strength invites rebellion. In the same way, generosity without discipline invites exploitation. If you let people test you, they will. If you allow them to take, they will drain you dry. If you never say no, you will bleed out your value. Nothing without limits is valuable. Scarcity creates worth. And in human relations, boundaries are the scarcity that creates respect. Look at the pleaser. His boundaries do not exist. He says yes to every request, lowers his guard for every demand, bends his back to every expectation. He dilutes himself piece by piece, believing he is buying affection, but what he really earns is contempt. People may smile to his face, but inside they despise him. Why? Because the man who cannot defend himself cannot be trusted to defend anything else. His lack of resistance screams weakness. His eagerness to please invites only further abuse. Now look at the man of power. His boundaries are immovable. He is not afraid to say no, not afraid to withdraw, not afraid to deny access. He does not waste energy explaining himself to the unworthy. He enforces, he does not negotiate. And when he is tested, his response is swift, decisive, final. After one demonstration, others understand. His time, his energy, his respect are not cheap. That scarcity gives weight to everything he offers. Every yes carries gravity because his no is stronger. Boundaries create fear, not the fear of cruelty, but the fear of consequence. People learn quickly that crossing certain lines comes at a cost. This is the hidden economy of respect. When your boundaries are firm, every interaction is measured, every approach cautious. Others choose their words carefully, manage their tone, watch their actions, because they know what you tolerate is narrow and what you punish is absolute. Understand this. The crowd does not respect what indulges them. They respect what resists them. They admire strength, not softness. The man who bends to every will is treated like dust. The man who refuses to bend becomes stone, and stone is stepped around, never trampled. That is how boundaries turn into invisible walls of power. You do not have to announce them. You do not have to explain them. You enforce them, and enforcement speaks louder than words. Weak men think setting boundaries will make them disliked. They are wrong. Setting boundaries makes you necessary. It forces people to recognize your worth. The harder you are to move, the more weight you carry. The rarer your yes, the more valuable it becomes. The less accessible you are, the more others work to earn your presence. Scarcity builds value. Boundaries build scarcity. Together, they build power. Burn this into your mind. Without boundaries, you are nothing. With boundaries, you become untouchable. A man who draws lines and defends them is a man who rules his own ground. and a man who rules his ground will eventually rule the men who fear stepping on it. Comment this if you understand. My boundaries are my throne. Prove you will no longer sell yourself cheap. Prove you are ready to enforce your worth. All of this leads here. The final law. The truth that separates the owned from the untouchable. You are controlled only as long as you need. Approval, validation, permission, love. These are chains disguised as comforts. Once you kill the need, the chains fall. And when the chains fall, you rise. Machiavelli exposed the reality that weak men deny. Survival belongs to the ruthless. The pleaser always dies betrayed. The ruler who commands respect, who instills fear, who bows to no crowd, he endures. You cannot be both a servant to their approval and a master of yourself. Choose one. And only one path leads to power. Picture the pleaser. He bends, he smiles, he obeys. His entire existence is spent asking to be liked. He lives inside a cage built from his own weakness. People use him until he breaks, then discard him without a second thought. He is not feared. He is not respected. He is nothing. That is the destiny of men who beg. Now picture the man who embodies this law. He is silent when others beg. He is calm when others panic. He is indifferent to rejection, unmoved by praise. He does not chase attention, yet his presence commands it. People may love him or hate him, but all are forced to respect him. Why? Because nothing can be used against him. He has built himself into a fortress, and a fortress cannot be bent. This is the transformation, from servant to sovereign. When you cut the leash of approval, you step outside their reach. When you master silence, you stop feeding them weapons. When you enforce boundaries, you create fear, and when you embrace solitude, you make exile powerless. At that point, you are beyond control, untouchable. Understand this. True power does not come from applause. It does not come from being liked. It comes from being unmovable, from enforcing respect through presence, through consequence, through the cold refusal to kneel. That is why the feared outlast the loved. That is why rulers command while pleasers serve. Burn it into your mind. Pleasing is slavery. Indifference is freedom. Fear is respect. These are the foundations. Once you live them, you cannot be broken. You cannot be manipulated. You cannot be owned. You do not beg. You command. You do not kneel. You rule. Comment this line if you understand. I am untouchable. Prove it. Prove you will not live as another pawn begging for approval. Prove you are ready to rise above the weak and enforce the law of power. And if you're ready to live by these laws, do one thing. Like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Because men who refuse the leash do not ask for power, they take it.